Hello and welcome to my channel. On this channel, I do tech reviews, photography, videography, video editing tutorials, tech reviews, which I already said, and 3D printing, apparently. So this is my attempt at the 3D printing hashtag tutorial. Well, not attempt, this is my video on the hashtag 3D printing on YouTube video thing. Let's go. So when did I first hear about 3D printing? Not quite sure when I could nail the specific part down, but I'm pretty sure it was around like 2018. A friend of mine on Discord was telling me, oh, you can design things in 3D software and you can print them. I'm like, print them? Like print it out on the paper, what's that about? But he said, no, you design your 3D objects, which I understood because I did Blender back in the day, and you can print it like layer by layer and you go up printing. I'm like, okay, cool. I may have looked at it at the time, 2018, but those prices, I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. So swore off of, well, not swore off it, just forgot about 3D printing. That's literally it, just forgot about it. The first thing I have 3D printed was Benchy. I thought this is what the first thing everyone 3D prints. I mean, it's kind of, when I was researching 3D printing, like everyone was printing a Benchy first. So I'm like, okay, let me print a Benchy. The first thing I've designed, well, the second thing I've printed was a bunch of battery covers for my RC Tyco terrain twister. Let me show you. It's right here. Oh, I even have one. So my RC Tyco terrain twister, I was planning on redesigning an entire Tyco terrain twister and 3D printing it, inspired by RC Test Flight's 3D printed Snowcat. I said, okay, Snowcat, I could probably design and 3D print one of these. But first I had to learn how to design and design a battery cover. So I printed multiple iterations. I printed multiple iterations. I learned about print orientation, whether you want it to be printed like this or like this, and how the print orientation affects your surface quality. I've gotten good and I've gotten bad. I've even learned along the way why you should or should not use multicolored filaments. As you can probably see here, you have different surface qualities depending on your print orientation. And some print orientations are a lot better than others. This is the first thing I've ever designed and printed. And should we go into like the second thing I've designed and printed? Yeah, sure, why not? The second thing I have designed and printed is very simple, very easy, took me about 5 minutes, was a holder for a turntable so I could do B-roll. I even have a hole for my tripod or a light stand. Stick my turntable on here and have the entire thing rotate, because I knew that 3D printing for me would take off and I want to show off what I've printed. Within my first 2 or 3 weeks of 3D printing was definitely a hobby. I was printing like crazy, just looking for random stuff on things or Thingiverse or whatever, and just downloading and printing. Oh, and doing time lapses. The time lapses, they were beautiful. At first 2 weeks, 3D printing was definitely a hobby, but now it's more of a tool for me because I'm into RC aviation on my other channel, and I design and print parts for my RC airplanes. The most common part that I've been printing, well, yes, the most common part that I've been printing for my RC airplanes are motor mounts. I built a test stand to test my electronics, and I've built motor mounts to actually go into the airplanes. The planes that I ultimately end up building are made out of foam board, and I've learned if you want to mimic a foam board part, don't use the same thickness as foam board, because 3D printed PLA is a lot denser than foam board, and you would end up with very heavy parts on your airplane. So at the moment, 3D printing is definitely a tool. The best 3D printer, according to me, is the one you already have. Unless you don't have a 3D printer, then get a 3D printer. My first 3D printer, and the only one I have, is the Elegoo Neptune 3 Pro. I unboxed it, it's pretty nice. I have heated bed. It comes with the flexible PEI sheet. Yeah, it just works. It's fast when it comes to printing small parts, like, oh look, one of the motor mounts that I've been talking about. So it's fast when it comes to printing small things like this. The bigger, more complex parts, well, those take time. I guess that is standard among all 3D printers. But yeah, I like my Elegoo Neptune 3 Pro. I think the best 3D printer there is one that could print with multiple different filaments. So you can print PLA and PETG. I think Daniel from RC Test Flight has a printer that he uses to print PETG parts and use PLA as a supports. And since PLA and PETG don't stick well together, those supports are easy to come off. I have been printing PLA parts with PLA supports, and I often end up breaking the parts when trying to remove the supports, or the supports come out very rough. If I had a multi-headed printer so I could print PETG and PLA and they don't stick, that would be great. But at the moment, I do not design anything too complex that requires that. So yes, whatever printer that was, Prusa SXL, Prusa Mark IV, whatever printer that's the best printer there is. I guess the number one tip for these multiple tips is learn how to do 3D modeling. You have a whole bunch of different softwares. Learn one, stick to one, get good at it. I would suggest something that is parametric, so you can define the lengths and widths of different parts. So if you have to do multiple iterations, because trust me, you would need multiple iterations before you get a part just right, I would suggest a parametric 3D printing software that allows you to define the lengths and widths of different parts. Because trust me, you measure once, print once. No such thing as measuring once and printing once. Even if you measure it, you have to keep adjusting and doing multiple takes, multiple prints, multiple iterations. So having a parametric editing software will come in clutch. So you just change the figure, make it smaller, make it bigger, whatever. My second tip would be get a pair of calipers. Because once you unlock 3D printing, your whole mind will become, okay, yes, oh, I could print a replacement part for this. I could replace a replacement knob for this. How do I measure it? Calipers. And I guess my third tip is don't spend too much money in it, / don't think you're gonna start a business 3D printing. I started 3D printing earlier in the year, and for my first 2 weeks I was just printing junk, essentially junk. After those first 2 weeks, my 3D printer was sitting for a while until I found out about 3D printed vertical axis wind turbines. Whoo, that was a mouthful. Oh my goodness. And after that, then we started back up again. Now, if I had spent more than $200 for my 3D printer, which is the cost that I paid for my Neptune 3 Pro, if I had spent that much money on 3D printer and it's just sitting there, I would be pissed. I would be pissed. I'm like, oh, I got this new shiny new toy. It's taking up space. So don't spend too much money on a 3D printer if you know you're not going to be using it a lot. Definitely invest in a good first 3D printer, but don't spend way too much money on it. There are a lot of relatively no-name brands that are reasonably decent. Check them up on YouTube, and hell, even check out the Neptune 3 Pro, which is like a generation old by now. I think the Neptune 4 is out, so the Neptune 3 is cheap. Get that. Alright, and those were my answers to the list of questions provided by Angus from Maker's Muse on the hashtag printing on YouTube, 3D printing on YouTube hashtag. I said that already. Welcome. Alright, thanks for watching, new folks and lurkers, and I don't know, I might continue making videos on 3D printing. I had plans of grandeur of making a series of painting 3D printed models, but those hopes are dashed. I won't even bother anymore. But we'll see how things go. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.